Going live now.
Cool.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Untitled Twitch Show live podcast, Advice Coffee Clutch. Come join us, why not? Unfortunately, today, Bonnie cannot join us. We are joined today by the fantabulous, wonderful, amazing, that entire Lady Gaga gif, Jessica Lees.
Yeah. Hello.
Jessica, where are you?
I'm in Delaware. I'm not in Delaware. But anytime somebody puts up the virtual Zoom background, it is 1992 in my head.
No,
And
exactly.
I gotta be in Wayne's World. So
I feel that. Well, now I have to leave Gravity Falls, Oregon, and go to the Sears photo spot.
that's the mood. I think that's what we're trying to capture here.
Yes. It's feeling very generational up in here. It's funny. Bonnie is younger than I am, and so it's always interesting seeing where the fault line is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel that with you as well, because I'm a couple of years older than you are.
Yeah.
And some of the references that are very, very like fundamental to me, you do not remember. And then there's stuff that you talk about that I'm like, oh, I think I was like a year too old for that.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of the me with like a lot of the later Nicktoons like Rocket Power or even SpongeBob to a certain degree, where I'm like, I understand this is popular with the kids, but huh?
Yeah. There's like a whole like, well, it's funny. A lot of it comes back around because there's about 25 years of children's programming that I completely missed out on. Then I have a child, and then I get to catch back up on all of it.
Right. Yeah. I am one of those weird child-free people who kind of wants to watch Bluey because I keep hearing how great it
Oh my
is.
God. You don't need to be a child to watch Bluey. It's good for everybody.
That's what I keep hearing.
It has said some of the most true things about being an adult of any show I've ever seen.
That's a lot. I love it. I love hearing that though. I believe someone did make a Mountain Goats Bluey mashup shitposting group, and that is just I love. Sometimes I love the internet. You know.
Well, I love all of these like concentric Venn diagram circles of shit posting groups because it's like, oh, I get Good Place in my Bluey, I get Star
Exactly.
Trek in my Letterkenny, and every time I find one of those, then somebody's like, oh yeah, there's a group for that. And so
Yeah.
now, like my entire Facebook feed is just like shit posting groups.
Man, the way Facebook keeps monkeying with its UI, I have discovered the feeds tab, and I can just select friends, and it's like the friends only version of LiveJournal, and it
Oh,
is beautiful. It is delicious.
can we stop for a moment and just wish we could go back to LiveJournal?
I mean, look, there is every single social media platform eventually tries to recreate LiveJournal to some fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I hate Vladimir Putin for a lot of things, but I don't hate him for anything as much as I hate him for what he did to LiveJournal.
Yeah. Like just at this a solid 22 years of just life. Just
Mm.
I had to. I mean, I ported it all over to Dreamwidth, but it like Dreamwidth is feeling a little livelier these days, but it's still a ghost town compared to the halcyon days of LiveJournal.
Yeah, I need to get back into Dreamwidth, and specifically I need to like go in and like pay the $3 to like lock down everything that I posted from 2001 to 2014.
Right.
And then I'll set it up again. I'll see what the social media landscape looks like over there. I should be journaling. We should all be journaling. We should not be like distilling our thoughts into 240 characters. It's not healthy.
It's true. It's true. The world begs for nuance, and the internet says no.
Mm. The internet says get it down to the tersest terms possible, and if you get one little thing wrong, we're going to roast you forever.
Precisely. My uncle was a psychologist and worked. He worked with a lawyer for many years to make a series of books about sexual harassment and sort of the like legal and psychological impacts of it. And he would be on, like I don't think he was ever on Oprah, but he was on, like those kinds of, chat shows. and someone would ask him a question and he'd give, a very detailed answer. And then the host would be like, all right, cool. Can you condense that into a 30-second soundbite? And he'd be like, Housed.
Yeah. Yep. Well, it's a lot of like, my bread and butter these days in the podcasting sphere is reality TV. And I've gotten to this point where like I can tell exactly how many times somebody in a reality confessional has been told to rephrase what they're saying. And
Ooh, what's a good tell on that one?
A good tell on that one is when they ask the question and then answer it. So
Okay.
what's a good way to tell that? What's a good way to tell if someone is being coached into their answer? If they ask the question first and then answer it.
Oh.
Or if they load up, like if someone, like back in the elementary school when your teacher said you had to phrase your questions in complete sentences.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like what happened today because you can't just
Right.
say stuff was terrible today. I didn't like what happened today because stuff was terrible today.
Right. You need to set up and
Mm-hmm.
deliver a full. You have to somehow provide the context as you're answering the question.
Yes, so that they don't have to put the question in.
Right. Lord.
Yeah. And of course, there's also, you watch enough of it, you can tell like when they absolutely did not say the thing that the show is purporting that they said, because it's clearly two different sentences.
A thing that I'm fascinated by is the universality of the confessional culture in reality television.
Yes, the way it bled into like scripted television now.
Completely.
This is just how we tell stories. Everything is a documentary now.
I mean, I think about that, like I'm like totally addicted to YouTube. I think I watch way more documentaries on YouTube than I watch any kind of scripted television at this point. And I am part of the problem, as a person who has made, several YouTube video essays myself. So like, it's fascinating to me that, we grow up and we're like, oh, I got to write a report. Oh, I got to write an essay. I got to do this. I got to do that. And now like entire cottage industries have grown up with that exact, with an iteration of that exact format.
Yeah, it's really wild how much of that is just like, how much of everything on the internet is just people commenting on other things on the internet. And it's not really a conversation. It's just like, it rarely becomes a conversation. I think like you have people responding to one thing, but then you don't have the original people responding to that other thing.
Right. There's
just no dialogue.
It's parasocial confessionals all the way down.
Yes. It's a turtle made of parasocial confessionals.
God, what a terrible and accurate description of the 21st century. Jesus
Do you remember
Christ.
when we thought the internet was going to be a place where you could go to learn about anything you wanted and meet anyone you wanted?
I mean, it still is that. It's just also hell.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was the same thing. It's the same thing with like generative AI. Like this whole conversation is wild to me because about 10 years ago, I worked for a reference publisher and we were replatforming all of our online encyclopedias. And we were trying to figure out a way like, how can we throw cross references into these encyclopedias in a really quick and easy way? And I said, I bet we can find a language learning model that can find those keywords and pull them out for us and then tag those keywords.
Right.
And so I found some people that were building such an engine, and I gave them 100,000 encyclopedia entries that they said helped train their model. And also we got back all our keywords, and it was like, what a great thing this did. And we got to watch it get smarter as we went along. And now it's like, oh, maybe I should not have done that.
Well, I feel like it's a similar problem with Archive of Our Own, because I've seen like actual professional librarians say this is one of the best tagging and filing systems that's ever been created, but it's all just spaghetti code that's a hot mess.
Yep.
I know exactly enough about the back end of a website to know A, what a disaster it is, and B, that fixing it would be just a tremendous undertaking that would take so much time and effort and money that I don't know if it'll ever fucking happen.
Yeah. And especially with something that's entirely volunteer supported.
Right. Yeah.
Which, sometimes that's great. And sometimes that's just like, oh, well, if you invested like even the smallest amount of actual money in this, you could probably do something better. But since we didn't in the start,
Right.
It's
Yeah.
sort of become its own like Akira situation.
Yeah. I have a script that I've been marinating on at this point for several years about sort of the pitfalls of volunteer organizations and how they are both completely integral to our communities, but how inevitably there's a tipping point where they get too large for volunteering to work. They get too
Mhm.
large so that you need to be able to pay, even if it's just only a couple people and everyone else is a volunteer. You still need at least a couple people herding the cats, and like
Right.
it is their responsibility to make the ship run.
And there's a point past which everybody coming in and telling you what they can do is not as valuable as you going out and finding a person that can do the thing you need them to do.
Precisely, and
Yeah.
it's wild because you see it across so many different kinds of organizations. I've seen it in the SCA, I've seen it in roller derby, I've seen it in Archive of Our Own, the Scouts, like just, I mean, and the Scouts does have paid infrastructure, but like you get a local group that doesn't really have any support around it, and you're back to that like totally everyone's volunteering situation.
Yeah. Yeah. You really get what you pay for a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've noticed this as well. Like having been on the ground floor of a podcast network that has become wildly successful, like at every juncture where we reach this kind of critical point where we got to hire another person to do a job,
Mm-hmm.
it's been, you've watched that friction happen and you've seen like where it can get better.
Yeah.
And, now we have like, I can't even name you every person that works under that umbrella in some capacity. It's a huge effort, and it's far cry from the days when like I would just call somebody up on Skype and edit it myself and send it in. Now
Right.
it's like I want to do that sometimes. I enjoy doing that, but that's not my. I'm just the on-air person now.
Oh man, the dream. I love. I have a love-hate relationship with editing, both audio and video, because I find it very tedious and awful until I think of a really funny visual joke, and then the joy and laughter of
Hmm.
some dumb cutaway joke sustains me for the rest of the project.
Yeah, yeah. I find like audio editing can very quickly become like an ADHD rabbit hole for me, and I'll just
Yeah.
go over it and over it again, and it it doesn't need to be like that, and it's it shouldn't
A
take 4 hours
a
to edit 45 minutes of audio.
Oh no. Oh
No, it was
no.
bad.
I mean,
Sounded
I
great though.
also I also am bad at corralling people into a 1 hour podcast episode, but like I would have sometimes up 2.5 hours of audio to try and edit, and it would take me days and days and days and days.
Yeah, it can be too much. I think honestly, Rob Sestardino, who runs the podcast network that I'm on, he's come up with the right philosophy, which is that it should be like it's all about allegedly unscripted stuff, so it should be fairly improvisational. And so if somebody's got 4 hours of material, he's just going to release 4 hours of
Oh my
material.
god.
And we have, it's kind of a running joke that one particular guy I co-host with. Shout out to Mike Bloom, who is one of the funniest humans on the planet and incredible consummate professional, has done amazing work. But if you put him on a podcast with you, he will go for 5 hours. And I, he and I were soloing on our Amazing Race recap yesterday, and I was like, okay, I have exactly 90 minutes. We have to cram this all into 90 minutes. Should be fine. 90 minutes is all the television we were given,
Right.
but we could go off on a tangent, and we did. It was fine. It was a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
I've always braced myself. I add like an extra 30 to 45 minutes onto anything that I'm doing with certain people I podcast with.
Yeah. No, it's wild because it's like you don't think 20 you can talk about a 22-minute episode for 90 minutes, but holy crap.
I talked about, we don't usually go this long. Last night we were recording the upcoming episode covering Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. Talked about that for 90 minutes, and it's 45 minutes of television. and
Yeah. Well,
it was great.
I feel like with that especially because there's so many years of history behind that character that any like I haven't seen any of Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, but like I've read a little bit about it from what you've told me,
Hmm.
and from what you've told me, and like the history in that character, it feels like every episode, even though it's set in France, even though it's dealing specifically, I can say that right. I haven't just
Hmm.
broken
Yeah,
an
you
embargo.
can. Yeah, no,
uh,
I've already been in trouble for breaking the embargo, so
all right, cool.
but
Um,
that part is not embargoed.
um, like the just I feel like there's so many things just even in the like the article that I read where something will happen and even though it's in France, it will have a corresponding moment or situation somewhere in the, 10 plus years of Walking Dead episodes.
Like, and I mean, granted, 90% of Walking Dead episodes do not do that. Like, they
Hmm.
just flat out give no fucks about what happened to the characters before that. It's like, what do we need them to do in this instance so that plot can move forward? Okay, well, they'll do that. But
Oh
this one, they
boy.
are really careful about that. They're like, this is why he responds to this situation in the way that he does. And it is very, like, bespoke for him.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they use him exactly the way he needs to be used. Like, if you have been away from Walking Dead for a long time, it is worth coming back for Daryl Dixon. You don't need a ton of context, but it's one of those situations. It's similar to watching like Star Trek Lower Decks,
Hmm.
where you could jump in Star Trek Lower Decks knowing the bare minimum about Star Trek, and it's a funny ass show that's well written and snappy, and the characters are great.
Right,
But
but if you
if
know what a
you,
Jeffries tube is, it's the best
yeah,
show you've ever seen.
if you know what a Star Trek collector's plate is, if you speak Darmok in your day to day
Oh
life,
no. I mean, who amongst us does not?
I mean, who amongst us does not?
Like kind viewers, Jess and I have been friends for so many years, and we one of my favorite memories is when we went to a Star Trek convention in like Secaucus, New Jersey.
Yes, and in Crown Plaza, and
Oh
they
gosh.
blew their entire budget on getting three of the captains to come. And
I only remember Shatner. Who else was there?
well, the other days they had Kate Mulgrew, and I want to say they had Avery Brooks and Kate Mulgrew on the
Oh
other
my
days, and we
gosh.
did not. We went on the Shatner day.
We went on the Shatner day. Well, now I have deep regret that we didn't go on the Avery Brooks day. However, it would have been lost on me because I didn't watch DS9 until
Yeah,
2011. So,
yeah, and I had met Avery Brooks very randomly at one other point, and I I would have preferred that. Like, DS9 is the only Star Trek franchise that I'm like, neck deep in the lore of it. I've
same.
seen most of the rest of it, but that's my first love and my last love. I don't think I'm ever going to love a Star Trek as deeply as I loved that one.
I mean, same. I mean,
But Strange New Worlds is a contender.
I
I
was gonna
will
say,
say.
Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are really, really trying. They
Strange New
are.
Worlds was a stronger contender before they dropped that musical episode on us, but
Oh, interesting.
yeah, I had so many. I was in my feels about that episode. Like, that was not. They could have done some cool shit with that, and they did not.
I did like it. I felt like it was a fun conceit. I thought obviously some people were better than others,
Hmm.
um, but it was fun hearing Christina Choi. Is that her name?
Chong, I think, Christina
Chong.
Chong.
Christina Chong sing. Apparently, she is a singer. Like that's
Yeah, she's amazing.
in her earlier in another life, she was a singer. And the actress who played Uhura also just absolutely killed it.
Yeah, like, she stole the show, but the songs were not good. Like, can you name any of the songs several months removed from this?
I'm the ex.
Yeah, but just because of the title.
It's true.
Yeah,
Also, Ethan Peck really just like completely sold that entire
yeah,
moment. Just oh my goodness.
yeah. I think they did the best with what they were given. But
Sure.
if you watch it next to like classic musical episodes, and I'm not a Buffy person, I went
Right.
back and watched the Buffy musical episode ahead of time, and those people were far less talented, and the songs were only marginally better than the.
But the connective tissue was stronger.
Yeah, the connective tissue was stronger. It told a more cohesive story, and it understood the fundamental purpose behind putting a song in a story.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
That
get
was
somebody from point A to point B in a way that you can't get them through dialogue.
It's really interesting that you say that, because there were definitely some songs in the Star Trek episode that were more successful at that than others. I felt that Una's song was good at that, and I felt like La'an's song was good at that.
Hmm.
And then the rest of them were sort of like, well, we have to have them sing something.
Yeah.
Also Chapel's song was good at that.
Well, Chapel's song was overcorrecting in the other direction. It's
Yeah.
just like, well, she's got to dump Spock, so let's just give her a song about dumping Spock.
Oh.
And I would compare it, like, honestly, for me, the best musical episode of a show that I've ever seen is the Scrubs musical episode, which
Okay.
was, it was Robert Lopez. So obviously those songs are going to be
Okay.
amazing. And,
Yeah.
it was 10 years since I've seen that episode, and I can sing like all of the songs in my head. They were that catchy, and they were that connected to what was going on around them. They had a good reason for it to be a musical episode.
Mm-hmm.
And even the people that were not terribly good singers, that gave them something to do within their wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I think also, I know that Colin Hay, because I know Colin Hay did the theme song for the show. I always got the vibe that music was much more integral to Scrubs than it may seem at first blush.
Right. Well, that was all down to Krista Miller, who was she's in the show.
Okay.
And she's also the wife of one of the creators, and she was like the driving force of like the show's playlist and its musical language.
Phenomenal. So we have her to thank / blame for the Garden State soundtrack.
Kind of, but I don't know. The Garden State.
We have someone in the chat. It is Z Lynn DC. Is that Kaylin?
I know who that's Kaylin.
Amazing. Hi, Kaylin. Yay.
Yay.
Kaylin says it's guy love between two guys.
That's right. It is. Everything comes down to poo.
Oh man. I was not a consistent Scrubs watcher. I did see a bunch of the episodes, and I really just always loved how well written the relationships were.
Yeah.
The show lived and died on that, and they knew it.
And it was one of those things like you could take any two characters and put them in a situation, and how they play off of each other and how they react to that situation. Like, I mean, my example that I always go to, because I talk about this concept a lot, is Parks and Rec was also a show that was also very, very good at that. They knew who everybody was on that show and how they felt about each other and how they would react in any given situation. So it was a lot of, especially the later episodes were like, okay, we haven't seen these two characters doing something together. What would they do together?
Right.
And how would that go?
Yeah. What would those two chemicals reacting look like?
Like if we take Donna and Tom and Ben Wyatt, how do they bond?
Right.
Oh, well, we'll make it Treat Yourself Day, and he's going to be sad, and so they'll make him treat himself.
Why is Batman crying?
It's one of my favorite episodes.
Gosh, Parks and Rec is such a fascinating show because it is simultaneously absolutely incredible. The first season is forgettable.
Gosh,
The politics of the whole entire thing have aged like milk. Several of its actors have been, if not canceled, then are sort of, we don't talk about Bruno anymore. But at the same time, it's just so beautifully constructed. Once they hit their stride and once they knew what they were working with, it was just consistently great.
Yeah, it had so much heart, I think, is the term I would use. And almost every show, it's really frightening. Like, how much we liked How I Met Your Mother, and literally none of that show holds up. Literally none of it.
Yeah, well, I think... Sorry, viewers, my cat was on my desk, and then she wanted to leave the room, because that's how that works.
You're reaching out into the abyss to let your cat go into the laser maze.
Exactly. Pew, pew, pew. How I Met Your Mother, it's really incredible because that last 5 minutes of that show ruined 10 years of television.
It squandered so much goodwill. I've never seen that much goodwill squandered in such a short time. Yeah, but also those last seasons were awful. There were moments that were really great, and I could see what they were building to, but then they were trying to build to this other thing, and they were secretly trying to do it, but we all know they were trying to do it.
Right.
And we didn't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible example where it's the anti-Lost.
Yes.
They overplanned. They overcommitted to a specific plan.
Yes. Yes, and okay. Also, Lost squandered as much goodwill for me, but that was gradual. That was definitely gradual over
Yeah,
time.
it's one
And
thing if it's a slowly deflating balloon. It's another if the balloon is, loudly popped with a giant pin.
I felt like I lost the slap bet in that last 5 minutes.
Oh God, slap just so much.
So
Suit
much.
up.
Yeah. Every well, literally everything that comes out of Barney Stinson's mouth was just
Yeah,
like you can't do that anymore, and we're all better off for it.
yeah. Like it aged so poorly, but like, gosh, I mean, I did really like the last season, and I think I'm the only one, and I think it's only because I didn't watch it until years later. Like I just
Yeah.
realized that I'd fallen off of How I Met Your Mother, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go back and rewatch, and the last season, I enjoyed the conceit of it, and I enjoyed sort of the like ticking clock element that they used with it. I don't know. It was a lot better than it had a right to be, and
Hmm.
then they just ruined it with the last few
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah, I had thought from like season 2, this is how they need to do that final season. They need to let us know the mother,
Right.
and it can be how she met every other person that is connected to everyone on the show, and then have her get met in the last 5 minutes of the show. And
Hmm.
they did everything right except that last little bit. And it
Yeah.
was like, okay, now we're just going to pretend that it wasn't really about her while we just spent the entire season helping you understand why it was about her.
Right. And fall in love with her and understand why she and Ted work well
Hmm.
in a
Like
way
my
that.
favorite episode that season is the one that's all her entire story.
Hmm. Yeah.
I can go back. That's the one episode of that series that I think all of it's aged well. I can go back and watch it again. Well, no, there's a naked man. There's the naked man in that one, which
Mhm.
is upsetting. But yeah,
What is it? 1 out of 5 times it doesn't work or something like that.
it's 1 out of 3 times it doesn't work. Yeah, I forgot he was in that, but the rest of that episode, like they just do such a good job of painting that character in this
Hmm.
very complete way, showing how she's connected to everything else that's happened over the course of the series.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh yeah, and then she died at the end.
Yeah. Rocks fell. Everyone died.
Yep. Except
Uh,
Ted and Robin,
Poochie
unfortunately.
Poochie went back to his planet. His home planet needed him.
I made
How
my
are
son
you?
watch that episode, the
Oh
Poochie
no.
episode.
What is it like watching The Simpsons in the 2020s with a child? And how far like is he watching current Simpsons or is he watching like
No.
old Simpsons?
Well, I'm not a child abuser. I'm not going to make my son watch current Simpsons. He's watching classic episodes, and I started cherry picking. He mostly just wants Treehouse of Horror. So we've seen every Treehouse of Horror.
Viewers, Jess's son is a person of just tremendous taste and this kid is the coolest kid ever. Like one day he will be a tastemaker and we will all be better for it.
Yeah, he's really. I
Also, it's
think
his birthday. Happy birthday, George.
yes. Happy birthday, George. Yeah, I mean, he's watching all of this stuff. Like he and Jill will really, the next time they see each other, they're gonna have a lot to talk about because he loves a lot of her favorite media pieces.
Yes, I am a 41-year-old woman with the taste of a 7-year-old boy.
Look,
Gosh,
when I was in my 20s, I had the musical taste of a 50-year-old man, and I had to just embrace it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you
Oh,
and I have the same problem where we are looking at Facebook and we get targeted ads with clothes and we're like, ooh, those clothes are cute. You click through, it's like, oh, ages 2T to 5T. I'm like, oh,
right.
right. That's not
And
for me. That won't
and
fit me.
I am lucky I can wear children's shoes. Um so like I definitely have shopped even when Payless was still a thing. I would go to the children's section first because their shoes were cheaper, cuter, and could fit me just as well. So,
Yeah, you can't really get light up shoes in a women's 11.
and that's a crime.
It's a crime.
That ain't right. That just ain't
Yeah,
right.
it's upsetting. But yeah, so George is big Treehouse of Horror guy. And every so often there's a joke on The Simpsons that I'm like, yeah, that's not aging well. This is not how the world works anymore, George.
Yeah.
But we,
For every the blood the gears of capitalism are greased with the oil of the worker, with the blood of the worker. There's also Apu.
yeah, yeah, there's that. We have not seen a ton of Apu episodes, which is a blessing. And one of his favorite go-to Simpsons segments is the "Don't blame me, I voted for Kodos." I feel like that's a good one. That's a good one to watch over and over.
Oh man, for a child born in 2016, that is just
It's prophetic. Yeah, and he likes Animaniacs. And
like I said, a child of taste.
yeah, Animaniacs, the modern reboot is almost entirely 90s throwback jokes. So
Yeah,
there's a lot I have to explain him.
I haven't seen much of it. The couple of episodes that I watched, they hadn't quite hit their stride yet. So it was still a lot of like, "Ooh, they're trying."
Yeah, it is a little forced. One thing that I did that I have clocked is that they remember how much goodwill they have from Yakko's World and the state capitol song and the solar system and Pinky and the Brain singing the parts of the brain. So they put in these educational segments that are about nothing that any child has any business knowing about, and they're fantastic. There is our favorite so far has been a telling of the events of the Bayou Tapestry.
And okay, I'm going to have to go look that up.
Yes, you're going to have to look that up because it's tremendous.
That's incredible.
The animation is adorable. Like it's done in like sort of a stitched up embroidery style. And it got George interested enough in it that he was willing to pick up the book that I had bought him in Bayou, and we read it together.
And I'm assuming then there was an adventure to the cloisters.
We have not been back to the cloisters lately. It's like in our backyard. It's ridiculous, but we do need to get back there. We've been to the Met in recent memory, and of course we always go to the Natural History Museum. I've seen the current planetarium show 3 times.
Oh my goodness.
Worlds Beyond Earth. It's great. If you haven't been, it's worth seeing one time.
Right on. It's worth seeing one time. I miss the Museum of Natural History. I went one of the last times I was in New York, and it was just it's so interesting, and how like it is. Some parts of it are so old, and some parts of it are just like finished yesterday.
Yeah.
And there is no consistency to which is which. And there's just so much of that museum that you couldn't really do that today. Like all of the taxidermy and all of the like the dioramas and stuff, like you would never really be able to do that today, I don't think.
Well, you know my favorite game in the Museum of Natural History, of course.
Please remind me, because I know you've told me.
It is What If Night at the Museum Was Real?
Oh no.
Oh yes. You walk through the Natural History Museum, look at a display. Here is an eagle flying through the air with a dead fish in its talons. Night at the Museum is real. The eagle is real. He's flying through the air. Does the fish come back to life?
Ooh.
Here are some hyenas eating carrion. Night at the Museum is real. Does the dead zebra come back to life?
I want to say no.
Here is a stuffed gibbon next to a skeleton of that same species of gibbon. Night at the Museum is real. Do they both come to life? Does just the furry one come to life? If the furry one comes to life, is it upset?
I'm going to say skeletons do come to life just because...
Well, the dinosaur did.
Yeah.
So...
I don't know if you ever read any of the Dresden Files books.
Years ago.
There's one of them, they go into the Field Museum in Chicago, and someone lets off an animation spell, and Sue the dinosaur comes to life.
Yes. Does she play fetch like the Night at the Museum dinosaur? Because the Night at the Museum dinosaur is basically a giant dog.
Nice.
I think it plays fetch with its own femur at some point, which is
incredible. My favorite thing I saw in the last last time I was at the Museum of Natural History is in the dinosaur exhibit. They have a thagomizer, and it's called the thagomizer.
Yes. Thanks, Gary Larson.
Just
Yeah,
like
it's beautiful.
it's so good. It's just you like you walk up to it and you're like, oh hey, a thagomizer, and then you look at the placard and it says thagomizer, and you're like, I can't believe they did that. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is a thing of beauty. And of course, my favorite wing of the Natural History Museum is the New York State waterways area that has not been updated since 1972.
Right?
And I hope they never update it.
Oh man. That's one that I feel like that's one that needs to, if you'll pardon the pun, to be preserved, as it were, as it is, because it really is a snapshot of that particular moment in time when the EPA was like, hey, maybe we don't fuck up the earth.
Yeah, this was a good. Yes, good. We should have stuck with that.
Yeah.
And then of course they have some of the dioramas. Like there's one diorama where it's like, this is an original diorama from many, many decades ago. Here are all the reasons it's problematic and wrong.
See, that's the one where it's Stuyvesant meeting the Lenape, isn't it?
Yes.
I loved that. I hadn't seen that until my most recent visit, and I was just like, this is how this is supposed to go. As you know, I visited Seattle recently, and the Museum of History and Industry is just that for the entire thing. Nice. And it is incredible because you start and it takes you through like a history of the different indigenous peoples from the Seattle area, and then sort of what happened when people started discovering Seattle. And it's just so well done because there's just so much effort is made to tell the complete story and to tell the story of how Seattle being, established as Seattle affected the locals and all of that. I especially loved how in the section on the mid 20th century, the World War II section is like front loaded. So here's what America did to Japanese immigrants.
Yeah, well, they have a particularly vested interest in that because of the large population there.
Absolutely. But like even in the exhibit, it said we are still working to update this, and so it was wild to see that exhibit where that information was so front loaded, and like it is literally the first thing you see when you walk into the section on World War II, and there's like several different displays about it, and then there's a placard saying we are still updating this,
That's
and it's
fantastic.
sort of like, wow, yeah.
And there's a podcast, and now I need to go look up what that podcast was, but one of the small island communities around Seattle in World War II, this family got orders to go to one of the internment camps, and the local newspaper said to the teenage son of the family, send us letters, tell us what's going on here.
Yeah.
And he ended up reporting weekly on everything that was happening for the entire time they were there.
That's incredible. I didn't realize they were allowed to send mail out. That's incredible.
Yeah, he was allowed to file dispatches back, and he has this great record of what was going on.
That's amazing.
I need to find what that was, because I want to make sure I'm not misrepresenting it.
Yeah, no, please do. I'd be interested in learning about that. Oh man. Yeah, it's nice when museums, do the thing they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it is nice.
I love all the memes I've seen recently of, the British Museum. We're trying to return things to the people who own who they belong to. Everyone's like, so fast. You did that so soon.
Yes.
What's the hurry?
Okay, here it is. The guy's name was Paul Otaki, and I'm trying to find what the podcast was because the podcast was incredible. It might have just been. I think it was just an episode of My Favorite Murder, honestly.
Oh wow.
I think 'cause they've done. I'm pretty sure that's what it was because that's fairly recently, and I would have listened to it. But yeah, you can look that up because it was actually very well done. I love that the My Favorite Murder Women are kind of moving past the like, you know, pretty white woman disappeared and was found
Right.
gruesomely murdered, and we're going to talk about the gruesome murder. And they've talked about some really interesting cases recently. And that was one of them that stuck out. They've also talked a lot about a really good fraud case is always a good true crime bet for me. I'd rather hear about fraud than like people getting
dying,
serial killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds more like they're embracing like the "you're wrong about" sort of style,
Kind of,
or Behind the
and
Bastards.
Kind of, yeah. And boy, I love You're Wrong About. That is a favorite of mine as well. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Scam Goddess.
Gosh, I love Scam Goddess.
Scam Goddess is great.
When one of the big draws for me when I watched the iCarly relaunch was her.
Yes.
Lacey Mosley?
Lacey Mosley, yeah.
Yeah, was her, because I had seen her on a Black Lady sketch show and thought she was incredible. And she was introduced as Carly's new best friend, and I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, she is tremendous. And I think that my favorite thing about the podcast is the tone that it takes of, if this is a really good scam and you're hurting people in power, we support you.
Right. You know, or if you're still actively using this one, don't tell us, don't hurt your bag.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I've been very entertained, and she gets such a wide spectrum of guests on that one. It's a different person every time, and
yeah, I'll have to do a deeper dive on that one, because the only episodes I've really listened to were the Sean, I just forgot his last, Sean King episodes.
Oh, sure.
Which were really funny.
That guy's fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah. Oof.
Boy. Yeah.
There's a lot of nicknames you and I can't say, but I laugh at all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It was entertaining. Oh my God. Yeah. What else are you listening to lately?
So I don't really listen to many podcasts now because it was a commute thing, you know?
Yeah, same.
But Song versus Song, I listen to every episode. I think. Have you ever listened to that one?
No, tell me about this.
So it's my friend Lena, and Todd from Todd in the Shadows, and the YouTuber, and they basically, it's what it sounds like. They pick two songs and they pit them together, and they sort of weigh the pros and cons of each song, and at the end they have to decide, one of these songs disappears forever, one of them stays. Which one and why? And I really like that framing because it can get you past the, well, I'm going to pick this song because I love this artist and this is my favorite song by them, versus this other song that I don't have as strong feelings about. It encourages you to think about, okay, well, for example, one of the more recent episodes was Weird Al's White and Nerdy versus I'm on a Boat by Lonely Island.
Huh.
And by that metric, Lonely Island wins because Weird Al is still Weird Al without White and Nerdy. He didn't need that song to
No, he was already here.
Right, to be the Weird Al we know and love. But I'm on a Boat is really what took Lonely Island from those funny dudes from Saturday Night Live who did Dick in a Box to, I have sung that song at karaoke.
Yeah. And it's also the fact that they were able to make an anthem out of something so basic and stupid.
Right.
That you cannot do that thing without singing that song in your head.
Exactly.
Like, I do white and nerdy things every day of my life. Do I sing Weird Al when I do them? No. That's fascinating. I love that.
Also, just thinking about this, just extrapolating on that for a second, a lot of the stuff in White and Nerdy is obsolete now. It's out of date. MySpace. No one's saying you too, me too, like an AOLer. Who the fuck knows what AOL is anymore? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's all about the Pentiums. Are Pentiums even a thing anymore?
I don't know. It's a good point.
So it's, or I guess it's all about the Pentiums is a different song. I'm having
Yeah.
a. I just realized I had a whole.
But you have done White and Nerdy at karaoke as well. I've
It's
been
true that
there
I
in the
have.
room when
It's
you
true.
have
You
done that.
have. You have. Someone even took a photo. It may even have been you.
Might be
Yeah.
me.
But in terms
Yeah.
of like songs that like
Hmm.
make a career, is a much more interesting question than what is the better song.
Yeah. And song, yeah, that is. I like the different ways you can categorize what makes a great song
Yeah.
as well.
The every episode has closes on 4 questions. The first is you can be in the rooms for every part of the creation of the song, soup to nuts, the writing of the song through the recording of the video. You know, which one would you want to be in? Then there's Megan Thee Stallion is about to get up to a night of hot girl shit. She can put one and only one of these songs on her playlist. Which one goes? The third question is one of these songs is stricken from the record forever. You know, which one stays, which one goes. And then the fourth one, William Shatner has to do a cover of one of these songs.
Oh. Well, that's clearly I'm on a boat. I really want to hear that now. I'm on a boat. Never thought I'd be on a boat.
You sure ain't Mio.
I really now I'm sad that doesn't exist.
Oh man. That's one of the that's the thing about that show though. Like so many songs, like that's the question they ask in every episode. So every time you're like, why doesn't this exist?
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So I wish I feel like that's a conceit that more podcasts should have, is have like a specific set of questions, and like the Rewatchables does this really well too, where they have like the recast, can we put Danny Trejo in this movie, or
Right.
Reboot all black cast or musical. And I wish that I was as good at coming up with discussion questions, because I would do this more often, because I think it's a good way to like revisit everything you've talked about and tie things together in a neat way that gets people coming back and thinking about those questions in the framework of everything you're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
It's a really nice device.
Yeah, because it gives some structure to a thing that could otherwise be, not structured in any way, shape, or form, and like it makes you think about things with a lens, which is always helpful.
Yeah. I think the best, most successful dialogues, like, they have a lens on them.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
The other podcast I've been listening to recently is Ghost of a Podcast with Jessica Lanyadoo, which is a astrology podcast. She does weekly forecasts, and it's your weekly forecast with no bullshit mystical advice. So it's shockingly low on woo for what it is. And she comes at astrology from she comes at astrology from a point of view that I take astrology from, which is a quote from Douglas Adams that I am about to utterly mangle, which is astrology isn't magic, it isn't anything like that. It is just a way to look at people.
It's like a cold reading. Almost.
Yeah.
I think you can get some truths with people, or it's like tarot. I think it's the same thing. Like, I don't think it's magical, but I think it's a useful way of framing like whatever is already on your mind.
Exactly. And so, a lot of the stuff she talks about, she'll be, talking about, a lot of the things she talks about a lot is how the Pluto return, it's like the Pluto return of the United States. And when that happens, like turmoil happens. And a lot of the stuff, it's very like confirmation biasy and like reverse engineering your conclusions, but you're also like, but also, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Or Saturn's return is another one of those ones. Like,
yeah. It may be the Saturn return I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Because I know Pluto has that big wacky orbit, and when it's like inside of Neptune's orbit, that's supposed to be a thing. And
yeah.
But
so
also, I wondered how astrologers dealt with Pluto not being a planet anymore. I think It's like it's still a celestial object.
Yeah, I think it didn't factor into their lives at all because people who are really serious about it have already included like Chiron and other
Hmm.
solar system celestial bodies that aren't necessarily planets, but still someone saw it through something, and now we have.
Do astrologers get excited when there's a new celestial object discovered?
I don't know, but that's a great question.
Now I kind of want to know. I'm curious uh, because I feel like I would almost like try to retcon that. Be like, okay, well, where was this at this time?
Right. Well, I
What
mean
was it
that's
doing?
the that I mean honestly that's like the whole point of Mostly Harmless by Douglas Adams. That's like
Hmm.
one of the central themes is that they have discovered a 10th planet, and these aliens have totally absorbed Earth culture and American Earth culture, and now are trying to they kidnap basically Trisha McMillan
Hmm.
because she's an astrophysicist, and they ask her to recalculate their horoscopes for based on their planet that they are on currently with the new planet involved. It's like they're on Pluto, but there's now a 10th planet, and maybe they weren't born in our solar system. I don't remember the whole detail, but it was very foundational for 10-year-old me, and it gave me a like low woo point of view of astrology that's always made me a little more inclined to read about it and listen to it,
Hmm.
if not in a my horoscope says we're green today. Like
Yeah.
it's not that. It's
Or I the thing that makes me very tired about astrology, so so-called astrology people is like, oh, well, you're behaving that way because you're a classic Virgo. And
yeah.
it's like dismissing you because of the month you were in which you were born.
Right.
And
Yeah, like there's a great Tumblr post that I saw where it was like be careful of astrology because it can lead to actual bigotry and discrimination on a systemic level, and a lot of people are like bullshit, how does that happen? And then people are like, actually in India there are people who can't get jobs because they're born in whatever month, and
yeah,
like and then someone else is like, oh yeah, in Portland if you're go try and rent a room from someone if you're a Leo or something like that, and it's like, oh okay, no, that does make
yeah.
sense.
Or I don't have to change my views on anything because I'm a Cancer and that's just how I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is funny because yeah, my my as a July baby myself, my whole point of view is I don't know, explain it. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
change my mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think if we're talking about problematic figures
Right.
with good ideas, Penn Jillette always says that the sign of like an intellectual is someone who has the capacity to change their mind if they're given new evidence.
100%. And that's especially him, and with the platform he has,
Yeah.
that's a very important thing for him to
Like the
try
way
and.
he has pivoted away from organized libertarianism is
Oh
astonishing
good.
and admirable. Uh,
Oh Lord,
he's practically a socialist now.
you love to see it.
It's beautiful. And he also, I mean, he basically talks about vegan food and how much he hates the establishment. That's Penn's podcast.
Yeah.
It's and also
Incredible.
like he will be given television shows and platforms that purport to be about one thing, and then he's like shattering the myths. Like Fool Us is supposed to be a show where magicians come on and do a trick, and then they are either fooled or not fooled. And it's like, no, it's an excuse for me to show magic on television to a lot of people, and
I
I
love
just bring
it.
my friends on and they do tricks for me.
I love it. And I've seen some episodes of that, and it's really great because the
It's
people they bring
wonderful.
on, you're genuinely like, no, how the fuck did they just do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, or you will see somebody, occasionally someone utterly fools them, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is what they did.
You're like, oh no, magic is real because they
Yeah,
just fooled Penn Jillette.
yeah.
Oh no.
The best was the magicians that pulled an honest to God, like literal prestige on
Ooh.
Penn. And it was, I mean, not the Jackman prestige, but the Christian Bale prestige.
Right.
And I mean, they saw through it immediately, but it was really, really funny that someone had the audacity. And they're like, could we do that same trick?
Right.
And they're like, no, you fooled us. Yeah, you got us. You didn't fool us. You were not fooled.
Oh man. If you had to recommend a podcast to someone, what would you recommend? And like
Well,
like context topic, like non-specific, just like someone's like, what's a podcast you love and want other people to listen to?
well, I think it really depends on the person because there's the one that always jumps to the top of my queue is not one I would recommend to everyone,
Oh.
but it's like every time that's the new podcast, it's the one that jumps up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's always that one. Like the top three are probably this one I'm going to talk about, and you're wrong about, and maintenance phase. It's like
Mm-hmm.
or like anything in the Michael Hobbs cinematic universe.
Right.
And then there's also Risk, which is the one that like if I got a new episode of Risk, that's the first thing I'm going to listen to.
I never heard of that one.
Risk is a storytelling podcast,
Okay.
and it's been around for like since the dawn of podcasts as a thing. It
Oh
has been
wow.
around for a very long time, and it is hosted and created by Kevin Allison, who was in The State. As long as we're talking about '90s throwbacks,
Oh man,
he
that's
was the redheaded gay
mm-hmm.
of the Jew, the Italian, and the redheaded gay. That's Kevin Allison, and he does a storytelling podcast called Risk. And the premise of Risk is like this is the story that you never thought you'd ever tell anybody, and it is usually like it can be anything. It can be very funny, it can be embarrassing, it can be dark, it can be sexual, and it is a mixed bag. It's something new every single time, and it's people that are very, very good storytellers that really draw you into their personal experiences no matter what they're talking about. And I've been listening to that for like since its inception, basically. And it's the one podcast, it's one of two podcasts that I support that are not like directly by friends of mine. Like I'm
Right.
a patron of this one, and I've pitched them before, but I don't have any story that is like juicy enough, or at
Oh
least that I
man.
would want to have out there attached to my name and findable on Google. But
Yeah, that's therein lies the struggle though.
yeah, like I have some good stories, and they're like, this is a very good story for the moth. I'm like, ouch, man. But yeah, I love it. Like every week, the new episode of Risk is the first thing that I listen to as soon as it drops, because it's always so absorbing, and it used to be my favorite thing to listen to while commuting. I kind of miss commuting every day for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's my podcast reco.
Right on.
Yeah, but I also like anything that's like purporting to debunk something. I'm a sucker for that. If Books Could Kill is like one of the Michael Hobbs podcasts that has been really fun because they take like every book that you've ever seen for sale in an airport and they pick that apart.
Oh no.
Yeah. Like there was a great episode on Malcolm Gladwell. There's
Oh
a
no.
terrific episode on the 4-Hour Work Week, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, those kinds of things.
Right on.
It's very fun.
Oh man. Yeah, oh, gosh. I don't know. I like that's the one thing I really miss about having a commute is being able to listen to podcasts because
Yeah.
there was a long time there where like I was keeping up with a bunch. It was like a couple of the different McElroy ones, Jackie and Laurie. I do try and keep up with Marin a little bit. If there's a person he's interviewing
Mm-hmm.
that sounds particularly interesting, I will listen. I don't know if you listened to the Naomi Klein episode that
No,
he just
but
did. Oh God, it was
oh
good
dear.
because she just wrote that book Doppelganger,
Yeah.
and so it's her on her press tour for this book, and Marin read it, and they had this incredible conversation about all sort of the like slide of misinformation and all that entails of like the last 10 years
Mm-hmm.
and how you know, the whole like Naomi Wolf, Naomi Klein thing has affected her in this particular way, but it's also, you know, representative of a whole systemic problem that, you know, hundreds of thousands of people are dealing with, you know, sort of people like the QAnon Anon kind of people, and, you know, people who
I love that she wrote an entire ass book about this, because she's got to be everybody's personal Paxton Pullman right now.
Completely.
Yeah, that's so great. And, you know, Maron is a great interviewer. It's just like, I can't listen to him talk by himself, which he has so much set up on the beginning of this podcast. I'm just like, skip.
Right. Well, have you ever listened to Greatest Generation?
Yes.
They call that marining.
Yeah.
They love it.
To talk about a podcast that's got its own language.
Oh man, that's another one that I definitely tried to keep up with, but
yeah, like you say loaf and everybody knows what you mean.
Loaf, 2%er. Yep. Gosh, love that show.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I want to do, like, you know, someday when I have ample free time on my hands, I want to like do a comprehensive rewatch of TNG and listen along with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like their takes on DS9 too.
Yeah,
their DS9 has been, recaps are really good.
Yeah, and that's one, like, I've seen that one enough times that I don't need to go back and watch the episode first in most cases.
Right. Yeah, my listening to the TNG episodes, well, all of the episodes honestly, were sort of what I was listening to in the car with my partner, and then occasionally I remember I forget where I was traveling, but I was traveling when they did the episode when they did Hollow Pursuits. And I'll never forget what they titled it, because it's just so goddamn perfect. They called it Porn in the Woods. And I was like, that is the most perfect. That is the most perfect description of that episode.
Yep.
That could ever have been conceived of. Like, I don't know what award they deserve for it, but please give it to them.
Yep. And again, it's like, you know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
That's amazing.
So it is a little after 1 in my time, so it's a little after 2 your time. I don't know if you're
I probably have to go back to work at some point, and I got to onboard a new babysitter today for my birthday boy, so we're excited about that. If today goes well, I'll have a 5-day-a-week babysitter starting next week. And
hallelujah!
Well, we have 2 different babysitters. We have one 3 days and one 2 days, and then I can probably start going back to work in the afternoons.
Hey, wouldn't that be cool?
Be awesome. So awesome.
Awesome. Where can people find you, Jess?
I'm still on the accursed Twitter until it goes away forever. Until, you know, what's his name, yeets it into the sun. You can find me there at Haymaker Hattie, and over on Blue Sky, which I'm not using as much and should use more, I'm Jess Lees.
Phenomenal. I will put links and such in places. I'm going to edit this a little bit and post it up on YouTube. I will send it to you. I will send it to everybody. Anybody who wants it, you can watch it.
Yep, we can circulate it, and I think it's a good time. I had a great time. I'm happy to finally, like, we don't get to talk like this very much. Like, we're on chat all day, every day, but we never get to talk like this. This is fun.
Yay! All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. It is very cool of you to show up. Kaylin, it was dope to see you. Yay!
Hard hands.
All right, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a happy birthday to George. And good night. Say good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.